Yes, my name is Clay Kane. I am the author of The Grift, The Downward Spiral of Black Republicans, from the Party of Lincoln to the Cult of Trump. And I'm also a radio host on Sirius XM Urban View. My show, The Clay Kane Show, airs 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Urban View, channel 126. I wrote this book because I care about my country. And I'm so disturbed at the direction the country is going in right now. So I called it the grift because, first of all, the black vote is so important to every election, whether it is a national election or whether it is a local election. And I wanted to break down how black Republicans, they were the first progressives. They were the original progressives. They moved the Republican Party and Abraham Lincoln to quote unquote liberation, quote unquote, and I stress quote unquote emancipation. So this is how we began. Our first black political ideology comes via black Republicans. So I wanted to examine how in the world did black Republicans go from Frederick Douglass to Clarence Thomas? How did this happen? How did we get here? The original black Republicans are rolling in their graves at the likes of South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, at the likes of some of the Republican influencers that are out there today. So I thought it was a really important analysis, and I hope that it wakes people up, because it's not only about the downward spiral of black Republicans, but also the downward spiral of racial politics in the Republican Party. What I found out is that the grift existed long before Trump, long before Trump. So what you saw in the 19th century is you did see some black Republicans, very few, having this proximity to power, this taste of power, and how folks were noticing, wow, if I hurt my own, I could rise in the ranks. And Frederick Douglass talked about a man named Isaiah Montgomery in Mississippi who voted against black men being able to vote. And Douglass famously said, "Others will be dazzled by fame and imitate their bad example." I
That
mean,
is
that's
crazy.
prophetic, right? That's crazy that Douglass said that. But he didn't use the word grift, but he saw it. He saw what was happening. And he was right. Others would be dazzled by the fame. So as time goes on, and as the Republican Party turns their backs on black voters, you see other folks saying, hey, if I align myself with this, I can get some money. Booker T. Washington is getting massive donations from a bunch of rich white folks. The media is praising them. They're getting worshiped in the media, right? So you see it, it's a downward spiral. It's a journey. It's a trajectory. Then you have this groundbreaking moment of Clarence Thomas. And the black folks in the GOP in the 1970s, policy-wise, problematic, but they weren't a Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas changes the game. And he realizes, if I can be the anti-civil rights figure, and I can audition enough, I will rise in the ranks. And one of the key things he does, he shames his own sister for being on welfare. And I have a brief interview with his sister in the book. And he more or less doesn't use the words exactly, but characterizes her as a welfare queen. And I will tell you, brother, at that point, he hit the blueprint. I'm sure you know all the lines. Get off welfare, Democratic plantation, I'm an independent thinker, all these lines, which is almost identical to what we see today. But then this is the monster that Republicans have created. It gets progressively worse, progressively worse. And you have some folks like General Colin Powell, who I policy-wise don't really like, but he wasn't a grifter. But even he leaves the party. Even he says, I can't deal with their racism. I can't deal with their lies. Michael Steele, former RNC chair, again, not a fan of his policies, but he wasn't a grifter. He leaves the party. So at the end where we are now with this downward spiral, Clarence Thomas breaking new ground, other folks following him, that there isn't even space for authentic, sincere black folks in the GOP who care about black issues. At this point, if you weren't willing to hurt your own, if you weren't willing to grift, you weren't even allowed in the party. And therefore, what we have now, they're dangerous. They have a legislative impact on Black communities. Senator Tim Scott has a legislative impact on Black communities. This guy named Mark Brown, who's running for governor in North Carolina, I hope folks read this book and see the alarm that I'm ringing. I also show how the GOP has been recruiting Black folks to say they're Republicans, even if they're not. I interviewed someone in the book who said she was approached. So it got here because certain people saw opportunism in saying whatever they can say to rise ahead, to rise above rather. And then they are supported by a billionaire conservative GOP base. And for some people, that's too intoxicating.